What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode with your Young Guns. Today, we'll be continuing another trade destinations video, and we are going to be talking about Mark Giordano, left-handed
Yeah, baby.
defenseman, 38 years old. He's currently on his last year of his contract. He's going to be a UFA at the end of the season. He's currently getting paid $6.75 million, and there's a lot of interest surrounding him.
Yeah,
Of the Florida Panthers, St. Louis Blues, Calgary Flames, um, Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Boston Bruins. So that makes five teams that are in need of a veteran left-handed defenseman. Also, concerning the Kraken, why would they want to get rid of this guy? Well, because they could get a good, I would say, they could get good assets in return for him. So the Kraken, they experienced a pretty rough season, which is normal for an expansion team. They didn't pull off the Vegas miracle run, as you can call it. So because they named Giordano captain and stuff because he is a fantastic leader. Ron France needs to weigh his options, see what the
yeah,
market is for Mark Giordano. And right now, Mark Giordano is appealing because this trade deadline, the 2022 NHL trade deadline, is a market based off defensemen. Not
yeah.
any type of defenseman, but left-handed defensemen and defensive-minded defensemen. So getting a guy like Giordano, according to what the Kraken are asking for, is gonna cost at least a first round pick. So
Oh
well,
wow, I didn't even know that was the price.
yeah, and it's pretty high, because
Yeah,
the market is so um in favor of defensemen, especially defensive minded defensemen, that's why they're asking for that. You probably look at Ben Sherratt, you look at who's I mean, yeah, Klingberg is an offensive defenseman. Chikrin, I would say, is a two-way defenseman, but obviously he's going to cost a lot more. But Giordano, I would say he would cost the least, but still get the job done because of his age. So yeah, in that regard, I understand why a lot of teams would want to pay up for him because he fulfills a lot of needs: playoff experience, veteran experience. Um, he also, I would say, I mean,
yeah,
was the captain of the Calgary Flames for a long time. He's currently the captain of the Seattle Kraken. So having another voice like him, a presence like him, a proven presence like him would be fantastic. Before we
I.
quit,
Oh, no.
I want to say that he currently owns a 19-team trade list. So
Okay.
that's pretty expendable in terms
Hmm.
of trade negotiations. And according to Jeff Marek of Sportsnet, Giordano said that my goal is still to chase a Stanley Cup, even on an expiring deal.
Yeah.
So it all comes to this now.
I
Where does
uh,
he go?
I look. I mean, look. There's plenty of options for Mark Giordano. I mean, for me personally, and I know that we talked about him. He's in Seattle. And he wants to chase a cup. I would love to see him go back to Calgary. And I know that maybe sometimes going back to the team that you already were, sometimes there's a reunion there, and like I know we've talked about reunions with Fleury and Kessel in the past, but um, I think Mark Giordano makes a ton of sense for Calgary because he was already the captain there, and like it's not long that he's been gone. He's only been gone for basically almost
And the
like
Flames didn't want to lose
that's
Giordano,
it.
and Giordano wanted to stay and retire with the Flames.
Yeah,
So
and
he
so
he has unfinished business with the Calgary Flames.
that's it. And so I think what that move, if Calgary were willing to make it, now obviously they traded their first round pick to Montreal, so it would have to be an interesting situation on how that would work. I don't know what type of pieces they would be able to be willing to give up to get him, but I do think that if the price is there and if Calgary's willing to make it work, I would love to see him go there, just because like the reunion factor, but also I think like he's talked about him retiring in Calgary before. And so for him to do that again, like for him to go and do that, it would be really cool.
I would say, considering the Flames, out of all the teams we have listed here, if they're not willing to give away any of their prospects, which by no means are come close to the value of Mark Giordano because they're all better. Um, I would say that they're the least favorable destination in terms of what they're able to give up. But I mean, when it comes to what the fans want, what the NHL wants, essentially, they would love to see a Calgary
Yeah.
Flames and Mark Giordano a reunion. In
Well,
terms of the next team, the Florida Panthers, so their main goal right now is to add more depth on their defense because you already see how
Yeah.
much depth they have on offense. They have two solid goaltenders in Knight and Bobrovsky. So I mean, they don't really have to add anything. But if they were to add anything, it would be a defenseman. They've been heavily linked with Ben Sherratt, Jacob Chikrin, and John Klingberg. So if all those guys do not land on the Florida Panthers, you're gonna have to take a run, or at least
Look at
attempt to take a
yeah.
run to get Mark Giordano, which would, in
I
my opinion, would cost the least amount
yeah.
of assets in a trade. And they have the prospects
I mean,
and they have the picks. I know they wanted they're dangling Vetrano, they're dangling Tippett as potential pieces to move. So an expansion team like the Seattle Kraken, you have to take that into consideration. That okay, these are guys. Yes, they're not top six forwards, but they're definitely going to help us
yeah.
take the next step in becoming a contending team for the Stanley Cup.
And that's the thing. And I think what's interesting too, right? Like you look at Florida as an example. They're one of the best teams in the league. They're one of the they've been fantastic on most nights. Obviously, lately Bobrovsky in terms of goaltending, I don't think he's been that great over the last couple of games. But besides that, Florida's played well and they're one of the best teams in the league. I think adding Giordano would benefit them a lot, really. And I think look, he's got 22 points in 47 games. It's not a fantastic year for Giordano, but it's definitely not horrible. And I mean, you have to also take into consideration the guy is 30. He's 38 years old. He's turning 39, right? He's 38, and I think at some point he's going to have to decline. And he's not the defenseman that he was, in 2018-19 when he was like basically. I don't know if I think he won the Norris, right, or whatever in 2018-19. But he had one of the best seasons of his career, 74 points in 78 games. Like he was solid. Obviously, he's not the same defenseman that he once was, but I think Florida adding a guy like him, even at 38 years old, and for what he produces and for what he brings, I think he could definitely help Florida out in the Cup run. And I think it's a deal that Florida should definitely look at. They've got Tippett, who's a guy that potentially there was rumors about him potentially leaving. Maybe maybe Seattle looks at that as a potential option for them. He could play a big role for Seattle over there. But I think there's other guys too. Denisenko's another one that I think Florida could move on from if they want to be able to trade for Giordano without giving up a pick. Obviously, Florida have their first round pick too, so that could also
Well,
be
they
a factor.
currently don't have their first two picks in the 2022 draft.
Yeah, so it would be a 2023 pick, but it all depends on what Seattle's wanting,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Is Seattle willing to be like, hey, we'll take your pick in 2023, knowing Florida's going to be good in 2023
Look,
also,
they also have a
or do they take a
2021
prospect?
second round pick in Evan Nurse, who's not by means not a bad prospect. You also have a 2020 fourth round selection pick in Michael Benning. So those are guys that you
Yeah,
could dangle as well
of
as
course.
trade pieces within a deal. But again, Florida. In terms of what they're able to provide in a deal for Mark Giordano, they have the prospects and NHL proven players. But in terms of the picks, that's going to be interesting
Yeah,
if Seattle would be willing to not go for the first round selection like a team like Florida and
for sure.
go and get something like a prospect or an NHL ready player in a deal for Giordano.
And
So
I
up
think,
next, yeah,
yeah.
sorry,
No, no,
go
no.
ahead.
I just want to say, and I think even with Seattle, right? Like if Florida wants to find a way to make this work, also, without necessarily giving up too much. I mean, they've got a lot of really good guys as well, but maybe they can find a way because Seattle has cap space, and I know Florida, they've got a little bit of cap space, but they kind of need to get rid of some salary. Maybe they trade a guy out, right? To gain that salary back. Maybe they trade a guy like Marcus Boulevard or something, or they go and trade someone or a couple of pieces that Seattle can take, maybe a bad contract, and do that and add a prospect or whatever, and go get a guy like Giordano. Maybe that's what they decide to do as well. There's definitely options there for Florida. I don't know if that's the destination that he ends up going to. I think Florida has better options out there. I still, out of the two teams that we talked about in Calgary and Florida right now, I still think Giordano's the best option. But I'm curious to see what the other teams are interested because I
Yeah.
don't actually know, to be honest.
So
I read Calgary and Florida as the two. So yeah.
yeah, up next we have the Boston Bruins. So
Oh wow, that's
right
interesting.
now, the Arizona Coyotes are the favorites in terms of having the best defenseman available in a trade, which is Jacob Chikrin.
Yeah,
But Giordano, he's he's going to be cheaper, right? And for
Of
the
course.
Boston Bruins, I don't think they want to give up too much of their future because they know that this could be like the last time they have a good team in place, meaning like Patrice Bergeron, who's on an expiring contract, Marchand, who's up there in age. The depth that they have is not the greatest, but it's good enough to compete in the playoffs for this season.
Yeah.
So adding a guy like Giordano is not going to cost too much for them, but he does fulfill a
Yeah.
need, which is the left-handed position on defense. Giving support to guys like Grillick and also McAvoy, and he has the veteran presence, which I think they lack on defense since Chara and Krug left. And
Yeah.
I bring in a guy with veteran experience and captain material. I think it's really gonna help the locker room and also heading into the playoffs, having a voice like that, like Mark Giordano, who's a natural born leader. I also wanted to say that, um, you know, uh, in terms of what they're able to give up, if
Yeah.
if they're not willing to give up a first round pick, we do know that Seattle has interest in Jake DeBrusk. So would it be possible that I don't know
Well,
what the deal would be? Maybe there would have to be more assets coming from Seattle to
yeah.
acquire the Brust because he is younger and he has a lot more years on him in terms of his career. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I do see Jake DeBrus being a part of a deal in order to acquire one of their needs. I know yesterday we spoke about Kessel. They need
Yeah.
a depth on the right wing. They need depth on defense, and they need um, a second line center. So the Brusque, instead of being traded alone, I think he would be included in a deal to
For sure.
acquire one of their needs and basically get one of those guys in order to take the next step and to solidifying themselves into to going into a deeper playoff run, knowing that time is running out for the Boston Bruins. So
And
I mean,
that's
I think that would make sense in terms of the Boston Bruins.
And I agree with you on that too. I think like we talked, like we, you talked about it yesterday in the Kessel video. The Bruins do need a left defenseman, and obviously there's been talks about Jake DeBrusk asking for a trade going back to the beginning of the season, and so there's definitely a fit there for both teams. Now the question is, are the Bruins going to want to be able to be like, hey, we'll get like is Jake DeBrusk by himself enough to get Mark Giordano? I personally don't think so. He might be, but I don't think so because I don't think Seattle wants to go that route, and I think they actually want to get something a little bit more out of Mark Giordano or a price more.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see if the obviously I don't know if the Bruins are going to be willing to do it, but I think if the Bruins want to make a real push for the playoffs, we talked about it yesterday with Kessel, and then we talked about it with again with now with Giordano. I could see a situation where the Bruins go, hey, we'll throw a third to Phil Kessel, and we'll throw a pick to Mark Giordano, maybe retain some salary, gives shed some salary the other way too, and maybe the Bruins will be able to make two moves like that that'll work and help them out. So there's definitely an option there for the Bruins in that aspect. I think it could definitely work out. I don't see him in Boston, but it could be an option for him too if they do decide to go that route.
I think out of all the teams we're gonna name, I mean that we have named or we have left to name, I would really like to see him in a Boston jersey. I don't know.
Really?
I just think that he would look very appealing. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't, and also the fact that they don't have a veteran defenseman since Chara and Krug. Having
Mm,
Giordano there, I just feel like it's right for Boston.
yes.
Anyways, moving on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. As we all know, Jake Muzzin is out long term. They've been still looking for a defenseman even before he got injured. They were looking at Klinberg, they looked at Chikrin, and they're looking at Sherratt, but they also have Mark Giordano on their radar. I know they currently don't have the worst D in terms of like offense, but like in terms of defense, they need a defensive defenseman. And
Yeah.
Jake Muzzin was one of those guys, but now that he's out, now you're in a deeper hole. So, um, I don't think they're also willing to the Toronto Maple Leafs to give up a 2022 or 2023 first round pick for an immediate upgrade. So
That's
I know that they're willing to upgrade their defense because I think their offense is fine. I still do think they need to get maybe a depth forward because having Kerfoot in the top six right now is not the most ideal situation.
exactly.
So that's why we mentioned guys like Kessel and other guys, maybe even a guy
Yeah.
like Phil Forsberg. But right now, I think their main issue, and it's been an issue for years, is their defense because their goalies are always left out for dry. They're
Well,
too offensively minded. They're not defensively minded. And then Jake Muzzin can't do it all on his own. And
yeah,
Jake Muzzin being injured, you're in an even deeper hole. And Toronto's not having the best stretch right now, and
yeah,
they're currently not the favorite Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. It's currently the
at the
Calgary
moment,
Flames,
yeah,
and
and I
that's
think
because of depth.
and I completely agree with that. And I think, look, Toronto's done a good job for the most part. I mean, in terms of addressing their depth, they went to go get Lyubushkin. I think that's a good move for them as a depth piece, right? And obviously, losing Muzzin hurts the Leafs a lot, and it was unfortunate, right? Because it happened by accident, and it's unfortunate for them, and it's a concussion, so we don't know what's going to go on with Muzzin, when he's going to come back. So if you're the Leafs, it gives you more of a reason now to go out and get a defenseman. And obviously, we've mentioned Ben Sherratt. We've talked about potentially Jacob Chikrin. There's been rumors about that too. Um, now that there's an opportunity, and the Leafs are going to have the cap space as well, they could go get Giordano as a short-term fix. And I think it's something that even if Jake Muzzin comes back, you're going to have Lyubushkin, you're going to have Giordano if they decide to pursue
They're going to
that,
be more balanced in
right? You're
terms
going
of
to have more.
defensively minded
That's
defensemen
it.
and offensively minded
Yeah,
defensemen.
and I think that that's going to help the Leafs out in the playoffs because Giordano, yes, he's offensively gifted. He is. He's more of an offense than he is defense. The guy can throw hits. The guy can play the body. And with Mark Giordano, because he's able to do that, and the Leafs lack a lot of that. Well, now if you've got Lyubushkin there and you've got Giordano there, and then Jake Muzzin comes back from injury, now you've got three guys that can do that. And the Leafs have lacked a lot of playoff toughness in the past, especially
Yeah,
on defense. And we saw it last year in the series against the Habs. So there's definitely things that the Leafs can do in that front. And obviously there's Ben Sherratt as an option as well. But I personally think that either way, the Leafs have to address their defensive core, whether it's Sherratt, whether it's Chikrin, whether it's Giordano, or if it's another defenseman like Justin Braun too. They need to find a way to address that need because they need someone to come in and replace Muzzin, at least until the end of the season, but even prior to that, because there's
yeah.
no guarantee that Muzzin comes
And we're
back.
going to be moving on to our
Right
last
away.
team right now. So the
Yeah,
St. Louis Blues. So yeah, they are an offensively gifted team, and by looking at their defense, you would think they're not a top defensive team, but
exactly. Yeah.
that is wrong because they are a top defensive team. They're currently in the top five for having one of the best, I would say, shutdown defensemen and allowing the least amount of goals and stuff. So adding a guy like Giordano with veteran experience to a D core with Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, you know, Colton
Yeah.
Parayko. That's fantastic. It solidifies their top four. Not only that, um, the thing is, though, I would say is that I think St. Louis is more keen on acquiring a younger defenseman like Ben
Yeah.
Sherratt, and I think they're gonna land him. So I don't want to spend too much time on the St.
Well,
Louis Blues, but they do. They would dangle their first round pick in this year's draft. They don't own a second round pick in this year's draft.
no, exactly.
I highly doubt they would give up a defensive prospect like Scott Peronovich. I don't think they do that. But maybe they could look at giving away a prospect like Matthew Kessel, for example. The thing is, I don't see St. Louis as the ideal fit because of how much more
Yeah.
interest they have in guys like Chikrin and Sherrod. So for me,
That's it.
they're the unlikeliest. I don't know what else you
I
have to say.
I agree. I agree to some extent on that. I think it's an unlikely scenario in the sense that maybe they go younger, they go cheaper too, because Sherratt is cheaper than Giordano cap wise as well. But I mean, I look at it from another perspective as well, and I know that we talked about it a little bit in the Blues video. That's why I won't get too much into it. But all I'm going to say is, I think you look at Colton Parayko this season, and he's kind of been struggling a little bit in terms of his defensive game. And I think having Giordano as a pairing for him could be super beneficial to his game. And so maybe if St. Louis looks at it from that perspective, they may be able to make that move. But I think besides that, I think there's better options out there. And I think there's better teams that need bigger needs than St. Louis in the defensive aspect. So
Exactly.
I do agree with you. I think they're more unlikely.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys, for watching this episode. We have much more content in terms of our trade destination videos, and hopefully there's more deals because I know it's kind of quiet on that front. But we just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and I hope you guys could look forward to the upcoming content that we have for you. Thank you so much. Until the next one.